Welcome back. This week we're going to go with the single hooked mouse. Nothing really different from this one to the one that I did with the articulated one. The only difference is that it's just on a single hook, obviously on a smaller scale than the articulated one. But to make up for it being just a single hook, instead of using the size 1, we go with a 1/0 in the front. But we'll go through the steps on this one. Like I said, there's not a ton different on this. There's a couple nuances throughout that make it a little bit easier to tie, or give you a little bit better of a profile, I should say, that we'll go through. But to start on this, the first thing that we're going to do is, just like the articulated one, we're going to bend this front hook at about a 30-degree angle. So we're going to start, just heat this up. Give yourself a decent amount of time. These are pretty stout hooks, and especially it being a 1/0, it's going to require a little bit of extra heat. So we're just going to take that, get the spot where we want to bend it, and then just flip that up. Just right like that is all we're really looking at. You can see the bend that we have right there. Not real aggressive. I may want to just take it just slightly more. Yeah, not real aggressive on that. But like I said, about a 30-degree bend up on this, and that's just going to give it that wake swim that you'll see from a mouse when it's in the water. Starting off on this, I'm going to go with the gel spun 100 right there. And then we're going to find a piece of, this is Crosscut Grizzly. I would prefer to have just a straight cut, but we're going to go with this Crosscut because it's the one that matches up colors the best. So I'm just going to cut a length of this off. You can see that's what we'll be working with on our tail right here. And I just want to measure this out for consistency purposes on my singles. I take this back just slightly shorter than the bend on the Renzetti right there. And then I'm going to peel all of this stuff out of the way and trim this up. There we go. And I just want to leave a little section here right at the very end. Go ahead and get rid of that. Doesn't have to be perfect cutting that back. Just have a little section right at the end there. And like I said, the reason that it would be better if it were just a straight 1/8" rabbit strip in Grizzly is because this would lay a little bit straighter back, but once it gets wet, it really is just going to follow the direction of the current. So I don't want to take up a ton of space with this. I don't want to run that hide too far forward. I just want a couple of nice clean wraps, as little bulk as possible in these wraps. Just get everything nice and secure. And then we're going to stop right there and take this thread just slightly forward. And I want to switch over to 200 at this point. You can start with 200 and tie in your tail if you want. I just like that it doesn't give me as much bulk. And it's a minimal amount, it really is, but it does make a little bit of a difference in my opinion. So now we're going to start with just a clump of gray deer body hair. We did the other one in natural, the articulated one. Like I said, I tie these in gray, brown, and natural. You can tie them whichever color you want to suit your conditions. The majority of them are going to have that natural look. Some of them are a little darker. Depending on where you're at in the world, you may have some black mice or whatever it may be. Just time to whatever suits your naturals that you have running around. Just going to give that a couple of taps, even out these tips. And there's a few longer ones there that I didn't really like too much. There we go. And now I want to measure this out. I want this sticking about a quarter of the way back, the overall length of my tail, as you can see right there. I'm just going to take and trim these, cut that off square, and get ready to tie this first stack in. So now all I want to do is just take this, get a nice loose capture wrap right there. Same thing. Second one goes a little bit more into the hair, and then just work your way through that, and then you have your back section sitting just how you want it. Underneath sides still clear. I got one or two that need to be trimmed up, but there's your first cut, or your first stack of deer hair, working your way back. Before we go any further on this one, we're gonna put our legs in. On the singles, I typically only put legs in the very back, but we're going to put some legs on the front and back. If you go back and watch the articulated one, show you how to make these, I didn't figure that there was really a need to double up the effort on that, and maybe we can cut down on the overall length of this video if I'm not re-explaining how to furl these. But if, like I said, if you want to learn how to make these and you haven't watched the articulated one, I go into pretty good detail on that step to make these legs. So just look it up. It's just been a couple of weeks back, so it should be pretty recent in the feed on YouTube. So there you go. You got these little black and white mixed legs, just hanging out. They're a lot shorter than the ones that I use on the articulated ones, and that's by design. I mean, I want these to be a little bit shorter, because we're not working with as much of a fly necessarily. So on to our crosscut rabbit, and this piece right here. Oh boy, I'm really not going to be able to mess anything up because I barely have any left. Gotta get more in. Alright, so we're going to go, like I was saying, with the crosscut rabbit. I don't like that piece. There we go, and I'm just going to get a little pinch of that hide tied right there, and then all I want to do is probably one or two, well, two, maybe three wraps on this. So let's go 1, 2, and I'm going to call it right there. I just want 2 wraps right through that. Once I get this tied off and cut, I'll show you the underneath side of what we're looking at. There we go. Get rid of some of that. The underneath side, you can see we've got that nice flesh color right through there, and then on the top side we've got still some, but I want to take some of this out right like that. Just force that stuff down to the bottom. Get 1 or 2 wraps to really secure that in place. And now we have another clean platform to tie in our next stack of deer hair. So now I'm gonna take just about the same amount. I may increase just ever so slightly as I go forward on this. More than likely though, I'm gonna be taking the same amount of deer hair throughout the entirety. Just get that cleaned out really nice. I may need to grab just a little bit more here. We'll see once I set this up to the last stack, see how it looks. So like I explained in the articulated one, I want to measure these out. That's a decent amount right there. I want these, you can see the different color variation on the tip. It goes from a gray to like a tan almost. I want those to line up the entire way. So I'm just lining these up. Where my tan leaves off on these tips, I want it to go right to where the tan starts. So when I measure that, once again, just cut that off square. Get one loose capture wrap, keeping as much of your material, if not all of it, on the top of the hook. Work it down to the hook. Start to pull down a little bit tighter, and then you can work your way through those hairs. Just kind of splay everything out right there, and we're in pretty good shape as it sits. I'm gonna get rid of some of those. But now you can see that second stack is working into that first stack that we tied in. We still have our flesh colored underneath, and I want to make just one secure wrap right there. Same thing as before. I'm going to go back to the flesh on this, and I may get 2 wraps on it. I gotta see if I can find a better piece here. Something a little bit longer. I don't like it all that much, but it'll do. So just as before, we're grabbing just as little as possible on that hide just to get it secured, and then we're going to bring 2 wraps around here. So get your first, and I'm really going to have to stretch to get a second wrap. Well, we're good. We barely got it, but we got just enough as long as I don't drop it. There we go, just enough to tie off there. And good thing we're really scraping the bottom of the pack on this here. So, before I go, and you can see right now that I'm right at the ascent of that hook where I bent it. I want to push this back just a little bit. I want to get a few loose wraps in front of that. So now I'm going to take just an old school packer here, and I'm going to push these back. I'm going to push that hide back just slightly. That way I'm not going to have that hide interfering with my tie-in points for the remainder of the deer hair. And just comb that stuff down. That looks pretty clean. There's a couple of fibers I just clean up slightly. So now here's where I'm going to put in my second set of legs, and like I said, if you want to omit this, you can. I typically only tie in 1 set with these, but I did tie a few of them with the 2 sets of legs, and I did like the action that I got a little bit more. It looked a little bit more realistic as well. So we'll just get that in place. There's 1, 2. Just really secure those in. And now we're on to working with the bear hook. There you can see underneath we've got those legs. These ones, the ones in the back are barely visible, but once this gets wet, it's going to slick down these legs. They're going to be more than just feet looking in the back there, but it really has an accurate profile throughout the entirety of this fly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on the bottom section first. So what I want to do is I'm going to go with just this spinning deer hair. This is a bleached deer body hair, and I'm going to pick out a decent amount here. I want to work on this bottom section first. I'm going to pick out a decent amount like I was saying, and this is all going to go on the bottom of our fly. So now this is just a really high quality deer hair that we're working with here too. Really helps when you can get some really good stuff to work with. Working with these shorter fibers can really get frustrating at times, or if it's just a really silky type material and it's just real slick, doesn't want to flare for you. So it really pays to take your time when you're in the shops and everything and get the best that you can find out there. So what we have now is just a bundle. I've cut the tips off, and I'm going to set this right on the top, and we're going to use our thread to work this hair down to the bottom. So I want to just capture everything around that bundle. One loose wrap, there's a second loose wrap, and then watch, I'm just going to walk this to the bottom with my thread. Okay, I have a relatively clean platform right on the top there. Before I flare this, I'm just working my thread, or working this hair down to the bottom, helping to push that a little bit, and then I'm going to grab it on the sides, pull down, and it's going to flare it, and everything is on the bottom. Really easy to work with it that way, and it has a nice clean section for you to tie in your next stack of gray on this. Grab another bundle of gray here. Get that setting right there. Clean this up. This has a decent amount of junk in it on this one, so I'm going to wind up needing to take a little bit extra than what I'll typically take. But it should line up for us pretty good here now that we got it cleaned out. Yeah, that'll be good. I'm just going to stack that, get those hairs nice and even again. And like I said in the articulated, if you don't want to stack these, you don't necessarily have to. It's just, it looks a lot better when they are stacked, and you're going to have that nice color break going the entire way back your fly. Just makes it look better, but absolutely not necessary. Once again, I'm going to measure that out. I want that just a little bit longer. I'm going to cut that bundle off square. I'm using the exact same thread path that I used before. If you want, and I probably should have, I could throw a little bit of glue down there, but we're going to go without it on this one. I may use it for the next stack, but I think we're going to be in pretty good shape here. So now work that around again. Let me get one more wrap. Like I said, same thread path the entire way through, same as I used on the bleached. Make sure that I'm lining up with my eye on this one, and then I'm just going to pull straight down. I've got the bleached sitting underneath, minus that one that's trying to peek out right there. Take care of that. That bleached is sitting straight down. Everything's locked into place for me. Now I just want to bring this around, and I may cut a few of those shorter hairs. We'll see. I should be able to work around them. We're not stacking or we're not packing any hair back or anything like that. We're going to have one more stack of each color, and then we're going to be ready to trim this one. You can see as we flip this underneath, we still have all of that bleached hair. We have a nice clean break on both sides because of the way we manipulated that hair working from bottom to top. Now we're going to go back to the bleached. I'm going to take just a little bit less than what I used on that front section, or that previous section. Just clean this up. There's not a whole lot of bad material, bad fibers in here, or not a whole lot of under fur or anything like that. Like I said, this is a really clean bleached piece of deer hair. So now I'm going to shorten up my thread. You can see how short that I have this right there. I mean, it's just barely hanging off of the hook. And I'm going to center up this bundle right here. I'm going to take that bundle, grab everything from the underneath side with my ring finger and my thumb, and then control that bleached with my pointer and my middle finger. And I just want right around the center of that bundle. 1, 2, starts to flare, and I'm just rolling this down right like so with my thread. Just kind of clear everything out from the front once again, and we have a nice clean platform to tie in our last bit of gray. I'm going to make one more push right through that. Just separate those fibers a little bit, and now, because I can see my thread, I should have did this on the last one. I should have put a little bit of zap on there, but I got ahead of myself. These brush applicators, if you're working with a lot of deer hair, especially if you start doing like poppers and everything, these brush applicators save a ton of frustration. You have so much control over the glue that you're putting down. You don't need a ton of this by any means. I just want just enough to touch my thread down there. It's going to lock that thread to the hook, and it's not going to allow this hair to spin. It wouldn't really spin a ton. This is just a little bit of extra security, especially when you go tightening and loosening, tightening and loosening. With this gel spun, sometimes it will back up a little bit, and when you're trying to get a really compact head or a really compact popper body, whatever it may be, sometimes if it just loosens up one, because we only have 3 wraps right there. If one wrap loosens up, then it starts to get a little shifty on there. So it helps to just throw a little bit of glue. Now I can release the tension on this, and I'm not worried about that one wrap coming undone. Not really coming undone, just loosening up a little bit on some of those fibers. So just throw a little touch of glue on there, and it's really going to help your thread control a lot. So now this is going to be our last stack of deer hair. Remember that you're not cutting this off square, because we're going to use the remainder of this material back here after we stack it. We're going to use that for the head of this mouse. Go ahead and get this in the stacker. There's a few fibers that are going to be a little bit longer that I'll get rid of. But outside of that, everything's looking pretty clean. And remember, we're not cutting that off square. So find where you're going to set that in. Your tan is running right into the tan from the previous stack. Catch everything right there, and then use the exact same thread path. There's one, and you'll see I'll turn my you have to use a different angle here, but I'm turning my thread to where it's running completely parallel or perpendicular to my hook, and that allows me to get that perfect thread coverage without capturing this stuff from the bleached underneath. So now that we have everything how we want it, we've got 3 solid wraps. I'm just going to pull straight down. It's going to flare everything out, and then we're going to peel this stuff back, and we're going to just push this back a little bit, find our head, just there's a few short fibers that may want to fight us a little bit here. I'm going to shorten this thread up slightly. 1, 2. Get a couple of good wraps in there, and then I just want to get a whip finish. Everything looks pretty good. 1, 2, 3. Everything's pretty clean there. Now we're on to the trim of this. When you trim this, just keep in mind that you are working on a bent hook. You know, if you go and just cut this straight on the top, you're going to wind up with it's going to affect the float a little bit, but it's just going to look lost, really. So remember that this is bent, and then all I want to do is just round this up and push this back toward my collar, or what we would typically refer to as a collar. Now you can see that nice clean break between our bleached and our gray. If you tie them like that, you get bonus points. The fish know it, and they eat it a lot more too. So that's just the way that it works. I don't make up the rules. There we go. We're rounding that up, getting that section right there. And then I just want to round these sides up as well. Not getting real aggressive on this at all. It's never a good idea to be really aggressive when you got a razor blade in your hand and you're working with deer hair. It can wind up going south for you really quick. Wind up throwing the fly out and starting all over. So we've got that rounded section right there on the top and the bottom. Now, keeping in mind once again that that portion is bent, I want to cup this just slightly, and I want to follow that bend right back it's not completely flat. We've got a little bend. If you want to, you can flatten them out. It's not gonna entirely be a make or break on this whatsoever, but I like it just a little bit rounded right through there. Be careful when you're working around your legs that you don't go nicking one of those. And all I'm doing here is just feathering this through, getting rid of some of these fibers that are a little bit longer leading back to that rabbit. There we go. Trying my best to keep my hand out of that back camera. It's a little bit difficult. There we go, just a couple more fibers to get out of there. we'll take an overhead look on this one. There's what we have right there. I can afford to cut that down just slightly more and make that a little bit thinner on the sides. I'm not really going to mess around with it too awful much just right now. I mean, you guys have the overall idea of what we're looking at for this. Take the plastic off of that. I just want to trim a couple of hairs out of here. This is just me getting really picky. I got 1 or 2 hairs that are mixing in with my gray, and that's just not gonna work. So there you have it. Like I said, I can afford to trim these down just slightly, make it a little bit thinner on the sides, but I'm gonna let that be. I'm gonna show you the bottom section right here. Has a nice flat, when this thing hits the water, it's just gonna, it's gonna have that wake, and it's gonna smack it pretty hard, especially this flat section right here. It's gonna get the attention of anything that's underneath. And with the bent head, it pulls forward, creates that little bit of a wake. The tail on the back gives some really neat motion, and then your legs just create the extra realism that you're after in this particular pattern. But there you have it. I'm going to turn this in the vise just slightly so we can get a better look at that against the background. There you go, and then we'll give that a rotation right through there. There is the single hooked mouse. I'm going to have to come up with a catchy name for it or something, but I can't think of anything right now. Haven't been able to for a while, so I'm just sticking with the mouse, I guess. Let me see. If you want to, you can put some eyes on top of those. You can fold some ears up and put them in. It all sits on the top. It's just deck fluff to me. It doesn't really necessarily need to be done, but if you want to just get a little creative and add some extra look to it, and by all means have at it, have some fun with it. Maybe I'll do a video later on how to put some ears in and all of that, but I don't do it for my commercial patterns. I don't do it for the ones that I fish personally either, but it does catch the eye of a few more customers, fishermen, whatever. Fish don't give a damn about it. But anyhow, that's the end of this one. If you guys have questions or comments, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. But thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next Wednesday.